So, hi. My name is Lou Augusta. I'm really honored and delighted and privileged and excited to be able to address you all. I will speak as loudly as is appropriate, so if you can't hear me, raise your hand and feel free in that sense to interrupt or give me feedback, okay? And I got here because I'm the author of 3 scholarly academic works on empathy, and that's what got me here. I have a fairly checkered background, which I'm not actually going to go into, but when IBM eliminated my job in 2008 timeframe, I said, hooray. And I spent that summer thereafter doing what my true, I think, commitment is in the area of education. I wrote those 3 books and got back into teaching and speaking and consulting. So we're going to connect the dots today between empathy and career transition. And I said, when I met Marty, I said to him, this is an empathy-rich environment. That networking, career transition is about networking. Networking is about relationships. Relationships are about empathy. Ta-da! This is an empathy-rich environment. And by the way, we don't need the word empathy to be empathic. The word itself was finally invented in English in 1895. We're not going to actually have time to go into the background, but the first point I wanted to make, this is an empathy-rich environment. And as you know, some of this is going to be my telling you what you already know, but maybe a useful reminder. And if you don't know it, that's okay too, because heavens knows there's plenty of stuff. And I want to say up front, this is not the truth with a capital T. And consider the possibility. Consider the possibility. By the time I get in front of a hiring manager, director, executive, the organization believes I can do the job. I wouldn't be there. Now, I might be a fantastic storyteller, so, you know, they're on the skinny edges in any normal distribution, right? There might be a few exceptions, but not many. In most cases, the organization is reasonably sure, God forbid, that all the other candidates, God forbid, went down in a plane crash, I would probably, the individual there speaking, would probably be able to fill in until additional arrangements could be made. So, like Marty already said, given a bunch of people who can do the job, the hiring individual is going to go to bat for the one with whom she or he can imagine the most productive relationship, the most where the individual can see possibility in terms of the success of the organization, the mission of the enterprise, and so on. So keep that, that's the context, right? That's the context for the conversation. Now, I want to be bold. I am bold. I think empathy is not well understood. I did some survey research. I'm the guy who goes around saying, we don't need more data. We need more empathy. But I take that back. We actually require both. We're going to need both. So I got some data. I sent this is not double blind. I sent the class out. Ask 5 people who are not members of your family, but who you know moderately well. Don't tell them the definition. Ask them what they think empathy is. And here's the answer. Most people will tell a story about compassion, about altruism, about kindness, about charity, in response to the question, what do you think empathy is? How would you define empathy? They tell a story, and heavens knows, ladies and gentlemen, the world needs more compassion. The world needs more compassion. It is not empathy. So, having said that, what the heck is empathy? right? This is, I mean, he's branded. He's got the brand. He's got, you can't miss. I mean, definitely the recommendation, but it's not empathy. So what is empathy? How are we going to get our hands around this? And so here, we'll give an example. And then from the example, you want to say how empathy works. When I get the idea that you're angry, I'm working top down. So somebody can come in and a manner of expression, tell me something. I get the idea they're angry. Or I can actually feel anger. I can get a sense of fear or anger or an emotion. So we're going to navigate between these two aspects of empathy, top down and bottom up. And in a nutshell, there are 4 aspects to empathy, which we're now going to map to the job search. In empathy, I am receptive. I am open to what your experience is. So you're afraid, I get a vicarious experience of fear. If you're suffering, I actually may suffer, but paradoxically, just a little bit. If I'm overwhelmed by suffering, I'm doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Compassion fatigue and so on. So I get a trace of, it's like being in the movie of your life without actually experiencing. I then take that and say, what's the possibility here? What's the possibility? I look at what it's like to take a walk in the other person's shoes. That's the folk psychology definition of empathy. Take a walk in your moccasins, right? And try to do it with your foot size. I don't really know you, but maybe I know some things about you. I can generalize, I can make an educated guess. Where does the shoe pinch? That's what I want to find out. That's what we need to find out. And finally, empathic responsiveness. I can be perfectly empathic. But if you don't know about it, it's a tree that falls in the forest without anybody being there. It doesn't make a sound. It doesn't make a difference. And so we're going to now look in a job interaction environment, what happens when each of these 4 aspects of empathy breaks down. Because the breakdown gives us, on a good day, access to a breakthrough. So in empathic receptivity, so I'm on the phone. So for example, I'm on the phone. This is a screening interview, let's say. I'm a contender, my stuff has happened, back and forth. I'm talking to a recruiter on the phone. And it is pretty clear to me that this individual is anxious. He really doesn't even know the job that we're supposed to be talking about. Now, I could have devaluing thoughts about this individual. I could have a sense that, oh dear, I'm again on the inside of a Dilbert cartoon, right? And I could be suitably cynical, right? Cynical and resigned. No, don't go there. I mean, heavens knows there's plenty of cynicism abroad in the land. And I did bring along a couple of Dilbert cartoons about job search. If we have time, we'll get to one of those. Because empathy is closely related to humor. But on a good day, I keep my wits about me. Now, where I say I, you may also say I. Right? So this individual is like looking through his email. I help him. It was a him in this case. In any way I can. I give him some guidance. Good news, he finds what we're talking about. He confirms there's a job. And this is the instance where, he has a bunch of questions that he's supposed to ask me and screen me. And what happened? Was there ever a time when you had to deal with conflict in the workplace? And good news, there is a time. And I have my challenge, action, result ready to hand. And since I'm at home on my phone, I got stuff laid out in front of me, and that's all very useful. And there's nothing, it's perfect, right? I mean, this is perfect. I mean, how better could I set it up? And so this is what happens. I mean, here, I get the sense, now, how does this go off the rails? If his anxiety, he's really is contagious, emotional infection. I start getting nervous. It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. Or resentful, right? So I'm on a good day. This was a good day. By the end of the conversation, here's what happened. He sends me the form that he's supposed to be filling out. The questions. Was there ever an occasion? What did you do in this job? He sends me the form. God bless him. He's going to call me because he's studying and whatever. He's going to call me for support and some other stuff, which we got around to. He's salt of the earth, he's really a nice person. So, now at that point, I get to screw it up. No, I get to fill out the form, good, bad, or otherwise. But notice I've got power. At that point, I've got power, and it's my game to mess up, which I'm not going to do in this particular case. And so this is how it works on a good day. On a bad day, emotional contagion carries the day. Now this can be, oftentimes sophisticated executives, it's not their main role to hire people. Amazing that wasn't their job. They're doing with finance or technology, which is their true love. And here all of a sudden, whether it's the managing director or executive, they're like, I got to put my job aside and talk to people. Well, they may not be good at it, which is an opportunity for you to be good at it. Notice that here empathy is about boundaries. Where's the boundary? And being respectful of the boundary and traversing the boundary. I know what the other is experiencing, but because I have a sample of it, and I think about it, and so that's one way it can go off the rails, right? I mean, in there, the recovery is to know I have a sense of what would be useful to further the conversation. There, I get access to the other person's experience, which is I'm going to say it, the essence of empathy. I got access, you got access to my experience as a trace, as a sample. It's a little bit like sampling. For those of us who know something about data, we don't want all the data, we want a sample. Okay, so that's all of these, receptivity, understanding, interpretation, and responsiveness, I suggest. This is an original synthesis of existing ideas. You can look at the literature, we're not going to go there, that would be interesting, but there's other opportunities. Simultaneously, and for purposes of discussion and conversation, we're going to, what is the term I'm looking for, unwind them and look at them sequentially. So next possibility, empathic, so it's empathic receptivity. We're taking empathy and making it into an adjective. Empathic understanding. So I was talking with one of the colleagues before the meeting, and so you know how there's typically a fairly long checklist of skills, competencies, experiences to be satisfied, and it looks like HR is making a career out of taking multiple roles, right? I've seen heads nodding and putting them together. Typically, you can have an executive who is doing sustaining innovations in mainline companies that have been around for, anywhere between decades and centuries, and innovative companies, new startups downtown, whatever, apps, digital, global economy coming at you. Take those two descriptions and put them together. Wouldn't it be nice? So you're going to see that. Now it happens at all levels. We need somebody who can prototype and somebody who knows the waterfall and it's all good. It's all it's abroad in the land. Anyway, so at some point in the interview, I'm going to get the sinking feeling that there is, let's say, that there is a competency or skill that is not only not on my resume, but I never heard of it. And it's like, how do you spell that? Okay. So, when in doubt, tell the truth. I mean, I'm not saying, don't. I mean, I'm a quick study, I'll learn fast. That's not the point here. That's not where we're going. We're going to empathic possibility here, because the thing that activates the empathy is the possibility. And the breakdown is that the possibility is breaking down. It is going out the window along with the job and the money and the satisfaction and the career and the, oh my God, and this one. And so, how to recover from that, right? What is it that can create the breakthrough out of the breakdown? Here's a thought. Once again, this is not the truth with a capital T, and consider the possibility. Now, since this is the realm of tips and techniques, this is like the second tip and technique. I may not be the best fit for the checklist. The checklist from HR. So if this isn't a job in HR, don't say it. But if it's not, everybody knows. I may not be the best fit for the checklist from HR, but you will not find anyone who is more committed to the success of this organization, more committed to the results of this project, more dedicated to developing the staff than me. And I offer you, feel free to use this material. I know somebody, it was not me in this case, they got the job. They didn't know that much about it. And they had to scramble to get up to speed. But it was a job they really wanted and thought that they could do well. You may not, I mean, and this is the truth. I mean, okay, so I said it wasn't the truth. You may not find somebody who's a better fit for the checklist from HR. It's the checklist manifesto, I want to say, Atul Gawande, right? No, it's the commitment manifesto. You won't find anybody, now research the company, right? Bold statement of the obvious. I got to have done my homework. I got to be able to own that. I got to be able to. The power is in authentically saying that. I'm imagining a job that I think I can do and is a good fit, and where I'm I've got maybe 60% of the comp, whatever the list is, right? But that's not, that's whatever. So that's empathic possibility. When the hiring individual can see possibility, she or he will move mountains to get me on board. Now, the next one is interpretation, empathic interpretation. And here, I'm going to be bold and forward the slide. You've got that in front of you. There's a lot of good material here. Feel free to reach out to me about the deck. But here's where empathic, this is really confronting, okay? So I'm gonna just get ready, cinch up here. I mean, at some point, nobody can use these words, right? But I'm sitting there having a conversation. This is my abysmal thought. This is the moment in which I experience self-doubt. Overqualified, overaged, overpriced, over. Don't worry about it. If you're not over, you're too young. You're a millennial. You're inexperienced. We'll get you on that one. You see, okay? So take some consolation here. I mean, this is not, this is nothing personal. This is not personal. No good deed goes unpunished. This is the inside of a Dilbert cartoon once again. And that is the opposite of empathy. So can empathy make a difference? Can empathy get me back some of my power in this case? And what I suggest is, so here's the recommendation. Here's the tip and technique. Change the context, change the conversation. Change the context, change the conversation. Overqualified, I have a depth of experience which enables me to be a mentor, which enables me to provide guidance, which enables me to make a difference. You see, here's the thing. You wouldn't even know the things that can go wrong between a project being envisioned and a project being implemented if one hadn't run the gauntlet on a previous occasion. And there's a form of words for saying that, but it's actually about having engaged with the distinctions in such a way that one has the depth of experience to make a difference. And so that's, now, in the case of overage, nobody can say any of these things, but people are sometimes sitting there having their abysmal thought. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, if you really feel the need to, talk about how one has a healthy lifestyle. One's getting one's 10,000 steps, and if you're not, you might have some work to do. There might be something there you want to take a look at. Working out, eating right, managing stress. Let's say you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, that's surely so not me. If it's so you, congratulations, keep up the good work. If it's so not you, there may be something there that you got to engage so that you can honestly and authentically and with integrity say, this is what I'm doing. Ain't nobody getting any, you wouldn't actually say nobody getting any younger. That is the truth with a capital T, right? So we finally got there anyway. Nobody gets out of this alive. There's also the truth with a capital T. But we don't want to dwell on that, okay? We don't want to dwell on that. And so here's what I want to say. It's a duck rabbit. Empathic interpretation is a duck rabbit. I want to make sure analogous to the most confronting statements, the most confronting statements. I'm not overqualified, I have a depth of experience which enables me to mentor individuals, to bring other individuals along so that I get a leveraging effect. How else are you going to increase productivity? Because everybody's running flat out as it is. It looks to me like, for the most part. I mean, there's not a lot. Everybody's doing more with less already. That's the given. So how is one going to make a difference? One is going to create new possibilities. One is going to mentor, leverage, and inspire. And that's what experience brings to the job. So I suggest that empathic interpretation is a duck rabbit, and there's nothing wrong. It's a duck, it's a rabbit. Actually, it works either way. There's nothing wrong as such, but so when somebody says something where I'm having the thought, am I good enough? That's a moment to interrupt that thought. Not that it's wrong, because, it just hangs there like something that's uncomfortable and not particularly useful. The problem with a thought like that is it's not particularly useful, it goes nowhere. And, I'm not a big fan of positive thinking, but if you have any positive thoughts, just be with them. Yeah, thank you for that. Positive thoughts happen. Be ready. Be open to, right, it's all about self-talk. It's all about self-talk. So if you need a little positive self-talk, go there. That's fine. There's nothing wrong, because positive and negative, it's the commitment that moves the mechanism. When the potential hiring manager executive sees the commitment and appreciates the possibility, then the breakdown becomes a breakthrough, which brings us to the fourth aspect, empathic responsiveness. And here I'm going to give you a war story, right? This is the sense where I get what you're experiencing, I'm inside your experiencing, I see that the possibility as a vicarious experience. I don't know if you're familiar, or it's almost like a movie, right? I'm not in the movie, but I'm participating, a temporary transient identification. So here's the situation. This is I think this is a time in my life the Big Eight had become the Big Six, and we're on their way to be the Big Four. I'm not sure how many are left. Okay, so I've got this interview with an individual, and I know them. It's all set up. I would not say the fix is in. I wouldn't say the fix is in, but I was networked in. There was reason to be optimistic. I was a contender. There was possibility. People saw possibility. There were none of the negatives. And this individual, it was in fact a woman, is telling me she's got a lot of credentials, and MBA, CPA, PMP, XYZ. It went on for a while, and I knew about this. And this is what not to do, okay, get ready. I said, well, so I have only one, PhD. Right, thank you. The temperature in the room dropped about 8 degrees. And fortunately, I realized, oh my God, if this was an unempathic moment, Lou, I had actually written the 3 books by that point, but nevertheless, they were in me in some way. And I recovered, and I said, that was really a kind of a selfish and defensive thing to say. It's not who I authentically am. I acknowledge your accomplishments, and I could only wish that I were so inspired to have done that. Now, I don't know. I think it didn't sound that sincere at the moment, just to be utterly straight. And so it was not my best day. It was not my best moment. It was my most narcissistic moment, in fact. And yet I did enjoy the laugh inside. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it for about a minute. You see what not to do. It was true. It was like, there's plenty worse things in the universe. Go to Google News, right? This is like a venial sin, I guess, for those of you who are keeping score, right? And so, empathic responsiveness, what does that look like? We was actually discussing that with an individual before. And it's good news. I think we're going to have some time for some questions and interaction. What is empathic response? So people, people have got whatever they've got. Oftentimes emotions are negative. Typically emotions are a roller coaster. But not only people in job search, career transition, people with jobs are having emotional roller coasters too. People with children are having emotional roller coasters, right? But happily, my daughter is beyond the stage where she's bringing home different kinds of boyfriends, each one of which reminded me of a lost puppy. And that wasn't bad, that wasn't too bad. I'm thinking, I can relate, and I've never said anything worse than, he's a fine young man, I'm sure he's a fine, because I knew, I digress, but allow me a short digression, that it's like, don't go through that door in the fairy tale. Don't go, as soon as that is said, the individual goes straight there. Well, okay. So I got it. So, what one wants to say, so take it back, reel it in a little here and take it back to the conversation about connecting with people in a job search. So if it comes up and the individual tells me, you've got to be both a executive who has got experience with sustaining innovations and one who has experience with disruptive innovations, we'll get the footnotes later, which is a very challenging combination because it's a totally different skill set. Then you say, I acknowledge, so you give acknowledgement and recognition. I acknowledge that this is a tough road to hoe. I recognize that that's a very dynamic and special set of requirements, and then speculate shamelessly. Then bring out, the footnote there is Clayton Christensen, right? It's the innovator's dilemma, the innovator's solution. Then you might consider going to your blog. Which is another good way if you're looking to open doors, right? And this is an empathic moment as well. If you're looking to open doors and you don't happen to have published a book, which you can send to the person that you want to talk to, look and see if they publish a blog, because then you can read the post. And if you find something interesting in what they've had to say about whatever it is they've had to say, you write to them and say, I was reading your article on sustaining innovations, and I found that this was engaging, and try to say something that dreams the dream a bit further. Try to say something that carries the conversation to the next step, and send that off to them, and would you be willing to meet with me to continue the conversation? It can be, to try not to shamelessly flatter the individual. Although that actually has been known to work. And so that's another way of giving recognition and acknowledgement and being responsive. And so that's another, so that is another tip and technique. So we're gonna look at a little bit of the relationship between empathy and humor. Now, I'm gonna read this to you. You see the duck rabbit on the banners in the foreground, and you see the duck rabbit on the banners in the background. This is not, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about religion. It might be, but it's not. There can be no peace until they renounce their rabbit god and accept our duck god. Right? That's the duck. We're having a conversation. It's very powerful. I think it's a very powerful conversation. And so this is where sustaining innovations, disruptive innovations, this is where it's at some level it may be Oracle versus SAP. That's been known to happen. And you can get the job done either way, but pick one and stick to it, ladies and gentlemen. That's just a thought. I don't really need to insist on that. And so you're not getting hired by a corporation. You're getting hired by a person who works for a corporation. And if I can build that, the fact that I'm having a conversation with this individual as a candidate, as a contender, means that the organization very probably thinks I can do the job. And so I should give myself a break and let up just at least a tad on the pressure that there's something on the checklist that I may or may not have. Now, if it turns out it's essential to the role, I have to consider going out and getting it, and that's a lesson learned. There may be lessons learned too as well. And so if I can build that relationship, the guy hiring me, the man or woman hiring me, the organization hiring me is suffering. They are trying to solve a problem. They have got some guy, man or woman, who is threatening to quit. and go to the competition because she or he is doing the job of 3 other people. And they need some help. It could be as simple as that. It could also be there's a real business problem there, and one has to sign up to keep it confidential. Nevertheless, if I can build that relationship by being open. So here's the thing. Here's what empathy, in the final, I gave you a complex definition with 4 parts. And you can find it useful or you can find it less useful. I'm going to define empathy again. It's being in the presence of another human being without anything added, without any categories, without any distinctions, without any labels, without any. It's being with another human being. And that's not easy to do. So, because first of all, I've had a bunch of questions coming at me, right? And I've got the checklist. It's being in the presence of another human being, by the way, without a checklist. But we've got a checklist. So be with the checklist and be with the person. And look for an opening to acknowledge their humanity, whatever that looks like. So oftentimes it does look like family. Oftentimes it looks like something has gone wrong or something has gone right. I mean, there are organizations that are actually got traction and where things are working and they have to hire people because they got so much work they don't know what to do. Happy the individual who finds one of those. You can call me, spread it around, right? Call Marty, go get out of work. Nevertheless, that lives. Be open and available to that possibility as well. And so you see the dilemma. You see the challenge here. I mean, and so we've got, we're going to have about 10 minutes for Q&A here. This is really the final thought that I have to share with you. In the final analysis, we've got all kinds of distinctions, vicarious experience. Take a walk in your moccasins, you take a walk in mine. It goes around, it spins, the tree falls in the forest, and acknowledgement and recognition occur. Look for the opening, and ultimately, it's being with another person. And so one has to take a deep breath. And in any interview, you're going to get asked if you have any questions. If it's a halfway decent interview, you're going to be ready. You may actually have questions about the job, and you've got to lead off with those, and that's totally appropriate. And I often want to know, what are you really looking for? What's really the problem here to be solved? And be ready, because if you ask, they just might tell you. And then I get to find out how I'm going to fit. And on a good day, I'm going to be able to say, that's exactly what I did in my last role, or that is completely analogous, and I can see how the 3 things I did there can apply and solve this problem here. So there's a fair amount of room for analogical thinking. Nevertheless, when that opening occurs, that's the empathic moment. What are your questions? And please, and I'll repeat the question. Go ahead. And you can say your name too if you'd like.
My first name is Gina. My last name is Bishop. How might you improvise when you encounter someone who doesn't have empathy, or who you don't perceive as having empathy? In some cases, you might naturally expect it, but when you encounter that, you might be sort of thrown off. So how do you improvise when it comes
I'm going to repeat the question I made. How do I improvise when I encounter somebody who, it seems to me, doesn't have empathy? Right? Well, so the answer is, it's a little bit like that quotation from Dale Carnegie. Right? This is my association. It's a holiday season, and the retail clerk is grouchy. That never happens, right? That never happens. And if they lack a smile, offer them one of yours. Offer them one of mine. Now, in the realm of tips and techniques, it's clear to you that they're dealing with something. It's not clear what that is, because the situation is the inside of the Dilbert chart. And it's fraught. It's challenging. There's a lot at stake. Here's how empathy works in all of those situations. Firm boundaries. Empathy, this is the third definition now, in addition to the four-part definition, in addition to being with the other person. Empathy is about firm boundaries between self and other. If somebody uses a bad word, pardon my language, if somebody crosses a line, if somebody asks you, can I have your password to your Facebook? Whatever, let's say you're on Facebook. I got on because my grown-up daughter invited me to. It's a good reason to do it, right? I'm cool. Anyway, so it's about boundaries. And so at that point, I don't think we're going to create empathy where it really may not live. To make empathy present in the moment, one has to be human about it. And if the perpetration is bad enough, what I say is, I'm really concerned about that. That's a concern. And then I scribble a little bit in my notebook. And by this time, the other individual is trying to clean it because they don't want to hear about it. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, so so let's see. We're going to keep a cue. There was one, and then up front, Don. But first, please, did you have your hand, or you just like?
Oh no, I didn't.
Okay, Don, sir.
Well, I wanted to make an observation, and I worked in HR, but I wasn't a recruiter. I do investigations into, workplace mishaps. But
So I apologize for that.
That's okay. But one of the things you're not under surveillance. But in either case, what I think I've noticed is people who do interviews, whether they're HR or the hiring manager, try to stay as dry as they possibly can because they've been told treat each candidate exactly the same. So that's a facade that they appear to be not empathic. And then the other thing is where you get to the point that you illustrated is when you ask the question, what is your greatest problem? When I get here, what problem do you want me to solve, and what is your greatest challenge? They tend to warm up. That's where you notice that shift in their, mood, and that's where you can find that way to share the journey with them.
Did you all get that in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to repeat it briefly. That's fine. Basically, Don, who is in HR, and says the HR staff, you correct me if I'm wrong, have been trained to basically present a fairly flat, mono, not a very bubbly presentation. You didn't use the word bubbly, but they're trained to be the same with everybody, which means kind of be affectless, to not express a lot of emotion. And when the opportunity presents itself, so it's nothing personal, it's not you. Yeah, but
That's also the hiring managers are told the same.
the hiring managers are told the same thing. So everybody's taking the affect out of the conversation. Everybody but you. Everybody but me, because my job is to be myself. And on a good day, I can be enthusiastic, and there are things I'm passionate about, and there are things right? So on a good day, there's stuff that gets me stimulated. And on a really good day, I'm overstimulated. Try not to be too overstimulated. But the further point that Don makes is, at some point, when you get a chance to say, well, really, what are you looking for? What's the problem here? Is there I do this X, Y, and Z, and can I help you with? Then the hiring individuals get engaged. So the sooner easier said than done. This is for the easier said than done file. The sooner I can engage, I say, well, really, what are you looking for here? What problem are you trying to solve? What job do you need to get done? What's the job? And I don't mean narrow job, but I mean like what's the business challenge here? So thank you for that. Okay. And any other questions? Any other impertinent remarks? Okay, so we have one. The lady in sort of pink, or maybe it's peach.
My name is Cindy, thank you. And I have a question on how to address an interviewer if they lack empathy or any kind of empathetic ability, especially when it deals with a word gap. Instead of them seeing the adventure.
I'm sorry, what gap?
A word gap.
A work gap.
It puzzles me because the greatest thing somebody can bring to the next job is a real gap.
Yeah.
That is allowed for adventure and innovation
Yeah.
and all kinds of wonderful things.
Yeah.
But they see it as a cancer cell. So how can you
Well,
be empathetic to
okay.
somebody that hasn't had a life outside of work?
Well, I have an answer for that. It's in the form of a Dilbert cartoon, however. and so there are actually going to be more than one. I'm going to fast forward to while we're there, empathy is a little bit like learning to ride a bike. It requires a fair amount of practice, and when no result without practice, right? It's getting one's interpersonal. We'll come back to that time permitted. But so I'm here's the thing. This is what not to do, right? So I'll read it to you. Basically, Dogbert bought the company. I bought the company that fired you. Now you can interview with me for your old job. And Dilbert says, you already know everything about me. An interview would have no other purpose than to humiliate me. And then Dogbert says, since when do things need two purposes? Is Tuesday good? So he is crushed. This is deeply cynical. This is deeply negative. This is what not to do. This is the opposite of empathy. Here's how you train. Basically, you're asking how to train empathy. Don't try to do this in an interview. Here's how you train empathy. Remove the obstacles to empathy. Remove the cynicism, remove the shame, remove the denial, remove the guilt, remove the games, remove the finger pointing, remove the remove, and people are naturally empathic. Empathy then shows up. So shame drives out empathy, right? If you have corporations sometimes managed by shame. Shame people. Think that's doing any good? Well, it's doing what it's doing. If it gets bad enough, people do whatever they have to do. I have no recommendation about that. Never, so you're asking, this is really a difficult high bar. I'm not going to transform somebody. What I'm going to do, an interview in which I was offered an opportunity to be shamed. Yeah, I was offered an opportunity, like 5 people. Would you care to confess? I hadn't done it. Would you care to confess? Opportunity to confess all the things I did wrong. I said, so what I had actually said is empathy is like oxygen for the soul. Anybody else around here feeling short of breath? That was not appreciated. It might not have been my best moment. It might not have been. It was, I was proud. I'm proud of that one. And they took it to mean that there was a lack of empathy.
Could I use that?
I wouldn't recommend it. Unless you want to. I was done. I was done with this organization. But what I did say, and it was okay. I was okay. I was okay. And I decided I wanted to set a boundary at that point. And this was a context, sometimes, I'm not going to give you any more background. I'm just going to give you the words. It's a bit of a duck rabbit. And what I said at that point, when I saw that I said, there's actually nothing wrong here, but there's something missing. We have an opportunity to make present empathy. Stunned silence. They got the point. Now, I had good news. I'm a talented guy. There are other opportunities. That was so. So really, the guidance is, what I'm hearing. And we have maybe 5 more minutes. About 5. What I'm hearing is like, the world is not famous for its not only not famous for its compassion. It's not famous for its empathy. It is famous for shame and a lot of other negative things. And we take a stand against it. The recommendation, this is about individual integrity. I don't mean that in a moral sense, although obviously don't be immoral. This is not a conversation about ethics at this point. This is a conversation about character and emotional integrity and about, right? I mean, I think it was Martin Luther King quoting Gandhi, who was probably quoting some other wise sage. Nobody can make me less without my permission. Now, if somebody's hitting me on the head with a 2x4, it's hard to remember that. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean it's any less true. Nobody can, I mean, and he was, Martin Luther King was doing that when there were protests against legal segregation in this country, not in this company, that's a story. In legal apartheid, and people were having ketchup poured on by them by bad guys, right? And worse. Okay, so nobody can make you less without your permission. Now that puts it where it belongs, right over here, right over there. So I wish to express my appreciation for the opportunity. I am going to stick around and hand out some networking briefs. If you know anybody, so here's the plug. If you know anybody who needs any empathy, call me. Really, this is what I have to offer. This is what I do. I can work with you one-on-one. Now, here's the advertisement. I actually teach a continuing education course at the University of Chicago Graham School. So this is not about job search. It's about empathy and the history of empathy. Starting, save the date, Tuesday evening, September 27th. 7 weeks. It costs money. I'll send you the URL. Once again, thank you so much.